officials, marriage to co-owner Todd Boehly is in tatters. Rumblings of discontent have been audible behind the scenes for some time now, but specific accusations of a breakdown in relations between Boehly and Clearlake co-founder Bedad Eghbali were always denied until now. Now, in the wake of a Bloomberg report last week that revealed Clearlake and Boehly are each exploring the ownership options, all parties have for the first time acknowledged the scale of the rift. People familiar with Boehly's thinking say he considers his relationship with Clearlake and Eghbali to be irreconcilable, and others claim the two men barely speak to one another anymore. Amid the many points of contention, there is broad agreement that three factors in particular have contributed to the fracturing of Chelsea's owners. A fundamental cultural difference in how the Premier League club should operate, with Clearlake and Boehly each believing the other has tried to influence sporting decisions. The decision to mutually part ways with their coach Mauricio Pochettino at the end of last season, and a lack of tangible progress in the stadium project over the last 2 years, with the club not yet resolved on a revamp or rebuild of Stamford Bridge. A meeting took place last month when the pair decided to explore their options. Todd Boehly and his associates have received approaches from other investors with a view to buying out Clearlake, while Clearlake has aspirations to buy out Todd Boehly. So, to tell the fuller story of how and why things have reached this point, what happens next and how it could impact Chelsea, let's find out. We will be using The Athletic for reference, as they have spoken to individuals on both sides, as well as those who have observed the breakdown of relations firsthand, so that we can give you guys the inside scoop on what's really going on in this ownership civil war at Chelsea. In the 2 years since Clearlake and Todd Boehly's takeover, Chelsea have disrupted and dominated football's global transfer market, committing more than £1.2 billion in transfer fees and generating more than 500 million in player sales. Players have been bought and sold at a speed and scale that has been as divisive as it has been dizzying. Todd Boehly has been the name most often cited in headlines criticising Chelsea's transfer policy, and the face of many memes mocking the club for outspending their rivals while labouring in the middle of the Premier League table. However, he has not led recruitment at Stamford Bridge since January 2023, when he relinquished his interim sporting director title and signalled that he would step back from day-to-day responsibilities. That move coincided with the introduction of a new sporting leadership team at Chelsea, formally announced at the start of February last year, with Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart confirmed as co-sporting directors. The window of the 22-23 season signalled a significant shift in the club's recruitment strategy to focus on younger talent prepared to accept lower salaries as part of longer, heavily incentivised contracts. But while Todd Boehly stepped back, Eghbali remained very active on the sporting side in that January window, flying to Turkey with Winstanley to negotiate the deal to sign their winger Mykhailo Mudryk. The two men also led the negotiations that resulted in Chelsea paying a British record fee to Benfica for midfielder Enzo Fernandez that same window. In the 18 months since, Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart have continued to work closely with Eghbali, who is more engaged in the day-to-day operations at Chelsea than any other member of the ownership group, and as the representative of Clearlake Capital, who are the firm that owns 61.5% of the club, he can technically be considered the most powerful figure at Chelsea. There is an important distinction I need to make here. If you are unfamiliar with Chelsea's ownership structure, 61% of shares are owned by a company called Clearlake Capital, with Egbali the main figurehead of this group, and the rest of the shares, the majority of those, are given to Todd Boehly, so they're not the same company, just to make that clear. Anyways, this dynamic speaks to what, in Boehly's view, is the major continuing tension with Clearlake, a cultural difference over how the two owners operate. Todd Boehly's approach, as evidenced by his work with Major League Baseball team Los Angeles Dodgers, is to hire specialists and allow them to get on with their jobs, while Clearlake, particularly Egbali, has taken a role considered by Boehly to be micromanaging. One person familiar with Clearlake's thinking disputes this, insisting that Egbali's level of engagement in Chelsea's recruitment serves only to support Winstanley and Stewart, and regarding the numbers involved in transfers and contracts, this is where Egbali's financial acumen complements their football expertise. In any case, all major decisions taken at Chelsea require sign-off from Todd Boehly, as well as Egbali and fellow Clearlake co-founder Jose Feliciano, and Boehly has never exercised his veto power over any transfers. This lack of open resistance is due to a desire to pick his battles. Similarly, there were no Clearlake checks on any of the transfer business conducted during Boehly's ill-fated tenure as interim sporting director in the summer of 2022. Chelsea have since attempted to address many of the unsuccessful signings made in that window, swiftly selling Kalidou Koulibaly and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and freezing out Raheem Sterling last month before loaning him out to Arsenal. That first window is remembered with regret by Clearlake, conducted as it was in the chaotic first weeks after a takeover and driven partly at the direction of Thomas Tuchel, a head coach which the owners quickly agreed they simply could not work with. Pochettino was a very different case. In the second half of May, as speculation surrounded the Argentine's future, with an end-of-season review conducted by Winstanley and Stewart looming, Todd Boehly made public announcements that appeared to advocate for keeping Pochettino as head coach. The number one thing is you have got to be patient, Boehly said when asked about Chelsea's strategy at a conference, and it has backfired. The tensions between Boehly and Egbali tested Pochettino's patience during his season, and the way his departure played out exposed the fault lines among Chelsea owners, which have now fractured. On their arrival at Chelsea in 2022, Boehly and Clearlake signalled that they expected to communicate a stadium plan by the end of that year. That self-imposed deadline was extended to the summer of 2023, then to sometime in 2024. More than 2 years into the ownership, the vital question of what to do with Stamford Bridge still has no answer. For the first year of their ownership, the project was being led by two of Boehly's trusted associates, Jonathan Goldstein and Janet Smith. Goldstein personally handled the purchase of the 1.2-acre Sir Oswald Mansion site next to the stadium in July last year, as well as representing the club at several meetings with supporter groups, but he did not formally veto when the final decision was reached. These sources add he considers Egbali to be trigger-happy and the driver of a call to move on, an accusation that is denied on Clearlake's side. A person familiar with Clearlake contends that it is Boehly who engaged in owner interference, attempting to influence Winstanley and Stewart's end-of-season review with words and action that displayed public backing for Poch, rather than allow Chelsea's sporting directors to complete their process. process and arrive at their own decision. There is also a belief on the Clearlake side that being overruled by Chelsea's sporting leadership on Poch was the tipping point for Boehly to begin exploring his options within the ownership structure. People familiar with Boehly deny this and insist the broader cultural clash with Clearlake is driving his thinking. During a meeting last month, Boehly and Egbali agreed that he and Clearlake would explore possible buyout options in light of their breakdown in their relationship. People familiar with Boehly's thinking believe there will be clear indication of the direction of travel within the next 2 months. But what does that mean? Since that August meeting, figures familiar with the talks claim multiple parties have approached Boehly, indicating they are willing to take Chelsea on with him. Long-term investors, not people who expect short-term returns. Ideal candidates seen as financial backers who can provide vast amounts of money. Clearlake's stance is that the future holds only 2 possible options: a continuation of the current status quo, or a buyout that would see Clearlake take full control of Chelsea. A person familiar with the firm's thinking insists that it has no need or desire to sell its majority stake and already has the funds to buy out Boehly and his fellow investors if they are unwilling to continue with this current arrangement. There is suspicion on the Clearlake side that this is actually a play to disguise the true motive of Boehly's camp, which they believe is an attempt to put pressure on them to make a big offer and purchase his stake. But Boehly's recent actions are not those of a man who appears to be losing interest. The billionaire keeps his distance more than before, but asks for updates on what is happening at Chelsea, with sources saying he has regular communication with Winstanley and Stewart. He flew in for Chelsea's opening Premier League game of the season against Manchester City and would have attended the Wolves' victory the following week, but it clashed with a personal engagement. Both sides have matching rights and veto powers regarding potential offers from outside investors. Clearlake can therefore credibly argue that all roads must go through them as the majority shareholder, but Boehly and others also have a measure of protection against any changes to the ownership structure that they do not approve. It is also important to note that not all Chelsea shares are created equal. Clearlake shares are Class A senior, while those of Boehly's and his co-investors are Class B junior, meaning basically Boehly will lose his money first if the clubs start to lose value. Despite this difference in shares, however, Boehly would be guaranteed the same return on selling his stake as Egbali and Clearlake would for selling theirs. So Clearlake and Boehly have set out their respective stalls, but posturing with an exaggerated level of conviction is part of high-level business. What happens if Clearlake offers Boehly a financial off-ramp to start again at another club with maybe more agreeable partners? Maybe they let him have Strasbourg, a club Chelsea own, all to himself, or completely buy out his stake with an offer he simply cannot refuse. What happens if Boehly's group finds new backing and also presents Clearlake investors with a handsome return on investment after 2 painful years at Chelsea? Neither party is going on the record to clearly state their intentions, and currently nobody knows how or when this will end. What is clear, however, is that the public nature of these grievances only deepens the sense of instability at Chelsea, and is yet another damning blemish on the current Chelsea owners. So there we go. That is the current mess of a situation at Chelsea explained. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to go on for a little while more. In terms of my thoughts on this as a Chelsea fan, I mean, yeah, it's not ideal. I kind of knew this was going to happen. They have very different strategies I would like to happen, I would personally, it's really the lesser of two evils. None of them are ideal, but I would prefer